Jimmy Fallon abandoned his account cards mid-sentence. The complete echoed through flat 6B like a gunshot. For a man who had baffled the art of seamless babble for 2 decades, the blackout that followed was deafening. Above from him, Julia Roberts sat frozen, her duke abashed as she captivated a distinct photograph. Her eyes, usually sparkling with that acclaimed smile, were now pooling with tears. The admirers of 240 bodies didn't move. The roots chock-full their attenuate accomplishments rhythm. Alike the cameramen bargain their accessories slightly, borderline whether to accumulate filming. Article had aloof shifted in the air. Article real, something unscripted. Article that would change the advance of this account and leave an banner on anybody present. This wasn't declared to happen. Not tonight. Not during what was meant to be an animated promotional actualization for Julia's new film. But aback you've been in actualization business as connected as Jimmy Fallon has, you abstruse that the best powerful moments are the ones you never planned for. And what was about to disentangle would become one of the best talked about moments in backward night television history. Not because of a viral sketch or a celebrity game, but because of what happens aback 2 animal beings bead their accessible personas and affects over article that transcends entertainment. But afore we accept why Julia chock-full mid-inter, we charge to go aback to area this night absolutely began. 3 hours before the actualization went live, Julia Roberts absolved into flat 6B at 30 Rockefeller Plaza with the activity she consistently brought to backward night appearances. Warm, professional, ready to advance her latest activity and share some action with Jimmy. She'd been on the Tonight actualization dozens of times over the years. She knew the rhythm. The pre-in with the producers, the lighting check, the accidental babble with Jimmy before they went live. It was a well-oiled machine, and she was an adept of it. But there was article altered about Julia that day, admitting no one could absolutely put their feel on it. Her arranger noticed she'd been quieter than accepted in the car ride over. Her architecture artisan mentioned that Julia had asked to be abandoned for a few minutes afore activity to beard and makeup, which wasn't typical. And aback she accustomed at her bathrobe room, she spent an unusual bulk of time attractive at her phone, scrolling through something, her announcement unreadable. Jimmy, meanwhile, was in his accepted pre-show mode, running through his monologue, blockage in with the roots, accomplishing clear warm-ups, and reviewing his account notes. His articulation ambassador had able the accepted Julia Roberts package. Clips from her new film, a funny adventure about her kids, maybe a bold or 2 if time allowed. Nothing heavy, nothing complicated. This was the Tonight Show afterwards all. The ambition was to entertain, to accomplish bodies smile afore they went to bed. What neither Jimmy nor his producers knew was that Julia had accustomed a bulletin that afternoon, just hours before the taping. It was from Edition she hadn't heard from in over 20 years. Edition who had been searching for her. Edition whose activity had intersected with Julia's in a way that alike she had abandoned until that bulletin arrived, accompanied by a single photograph that would anon be sitting on Jimmy's desk. The actualization opened as it consistently did. Jimmy's address landed perfectly. The admirers was hot. The activity was right. Aback he introduced Julia Roberts. The acclaim was thunderous. She absolved out in an affected dress, bouncing to the crowd, adhering Jimmy, clearing into the bedfellow armchair with the accomplished affluence of Edition who'd done this 1,000 times. Julia Roberts, everybody. Jimmy beamed, and the admirers erupted again. It's so acceptable to accept you back. It's acceptable to be here, Jimmy. Julia smiled, and for a moment, aggregate seemed normal. They affable into the interview. Jimmy asked about her new blur, and Julia delivered charming, clear answers. She told a funny adventure about her babe that had the admirers laughing. Jimmy showed a clip from the cine, and they bantered about her co-stars. It was arbiter backward night television, bland and entertaining. But a fresh about 12 account into the segment, article abrupt happened. Jimmy accomplished for his abutting agenda card, accessible to alteration into a prepared adventure about Julia's aboriginal career. When Julia aback disconnected him. Jimmy, can I actualization you something? Her articulation had changed. The professional brightness was gone, replaced by something raw, article vulnerable. Jimmy looked up from his cards, his allocution actualization host instincts a non-analysis about face and tone. Of course. Yeah. What is it? Julia accomplished into a baby bag she'd brought with her. Article the producers hadn't alike noticed during the pre-show check. She pulled out a photograph, a concrete print, which in itself was abnormal in an age where aggregate lived on phones. Her hands were afraid hardly as she captivated it. "I accustomed this today," she said quietly, her articulation almost oral over the studio monitors. "And I haven't been able to stop cerebration about it since." The audience, which had been airy and affable moments. Jimmy leaned forward collectively. His expression shifted from talk show host to concerned acquaintance in an instant. He leaned across his desk, his account cards forgotten. "What is it?" he asked gently, his voice bare of all performance. Julia looked at the photograph, afresh at Jimmy, afresh at the audience. For a connected moment, she seemed to be chief whether to continue. The blackout connected 10 abnormal 15. In television time, it felt like an eternity. And a fresh Jimmy Fallon did article he'd never done in over a decade of hosting The Tonight Show. He stood up, walked about his desk, and sat on the bend of it afterpiece to Julia. The way you would sit abutting to an acquaintance who bear support, not the way a host conducts an interview. "Julia, you don't accept to allotment this if you don't appetite to," Jimmy said softly, abandoning all pretense of entertainment. "But if you do, we're here." Julia looked up at him, tears now acutely arresting in her eyes, and nodded. "I appetite to," she whispered. "I charge to." She captivated up the photograph, and the camera zoomed in carefully, respectfully. It showed an abundant adolescent Julia Roberts, continuing next to a boyish babe in what appeared to be a hospital room. Both were smiling, admitting the babe was acutely ill, thin, with a bandage accoutrement her arch where chemotherapy had taken her hair. Her name was Emma. Julia began, her voice steadier now, as if administration the story was giving her strength. "I met her in 1991 aback. I was filming Sleeping with the Enemy in South Carolina. The admirers was absolutely bashful now. Every eye was on Julia. Emma was 16 years old, and she was dying of leukemia. Her mom wrote to the Assembly Aggregation Allurement if there was any way I could appointment her babe in the hospital. Emma admired movies, admired acting, and her bigger dream was to meet me." Jimmy's eyes were bound on Julia. "I went to see her," Julia said, a small smile breaking through her tears. "And we spent 3 hours together. She asked me about acting, about Hollywood, about what it was like to kiss Richard Gere." A baby beam from the audience, tender and sympathetic. She was so smart, so funny, so abounding of life. "Before I left, she asked me to affiance her something. She said, 'Promise me you'll bethink that actuality acclaim doesn't matter. What affairs is actuality kind, actuality real, and assuming up for people?'" A distinct tear rolled bottomward Jimmy's cheek. "I promised her," Julia said. "And 2 months later, I begin out she had anesthetized away. I carried that affiance with me. But over the years, I'm abashed to say I forgot about Emma." She captivated up the photograph again. "This morning, I accustomed an email from Emma's younger sister, Sarah. She began me through amusing media. She said Emma had kept an account, and in her final entry she wrote about our meeting. How I fabricated her feel seen, how I sat with her not as a movie star, but as a person, and how she believed the world would be bigger if anybody showed up for anniversary other. The flat was so quiet you could apprehend the air conditioning bustling in the vents." Jimmy accomplished over, and acclaim took Julia's hand. "Emma's sister is here tonight," Julia said suddenly. "Sarah, area are you?" A adolescent woman in the third row stood up, tears alive bottomward her face. Jimmy didn't hesitate. He walked off the stage, capturing article television rarely shows, raw, unfiltered humanity, and embraced Sarah. Bear no soundtrack. Subscribe and leave an animated version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. Aback they finally separated. Jimmy did article else unprecedented. He affronted to his administrator and said loud abundant for the admirers to hear. "We're activity to booty a moment here. No commercial. We're blockage with this." Arrangement admiral watching from the ascendancy allowance exchanged uncertain glances, but article about the moment told them not to intervene. This was bigger than format, bigger than bartering breaks, bigger than the apparatus of backward night television. Jimmy pulled up edition chair, accession it so that Julia and Sarah could sit next to anniversary other, and he sat above from them. No board amid them, no barrier, aloof 3 bodies accepting a conversation. "Sarah," Jimmy said gently, "acquaint us about Emma. Acquaint us who she was above that hospital room." And Sarah did. She told them about Emma's adulation of music, how she accomplished herself to ball guitar alike after she got sick. She told them about Emma's faculty of humor, how she'd accomplish up silly songs to accomplish Sarah beam aback their parents were stressed. She told them about Emma's compassion, how alike in the hospital she'd advise added patients, abnormally the adolescent accouchement who were scared. She capital to be an actress, Sarah said, attractive at Julia. Not because she capital to be famous, but because she capital to a quaint belief that mattered. She capital to accomplish bodies feel beneath alone. Julia nodded, beginning tears falling. She would accept been extraordinary. She was extraordinary, Sarah corrected gently. And you helped her see that. She paused, attractive at the photograph in Julia's hands. But a few months ago, I began Emma's journal. I apprehend what she wrote about you, Julia, about your visit, about how you showed up for her with such 18-carat kindness. The audience was absolutely still. Emma wrote, Julia Roberts could accept beatific an autograph or fabricated a quick actualization for a photo op. But she didn't. She sat with me. She asked me questions. She advised me like I mattered. Sarah continued, that afflicted my life. It fabricated me apprehend I'd spent years actuality angry instead of actuality, the affectionate of actuality Emma believed the apple bear added of. Jimmy stood up slowly and handed Sarah his Tonight Show pin. This is for Emma, he said quietly. For teaching us what absolutely matters. The admirers rose as one, acclaim abrasion over the stage. Julia and Sarah accepted anniversary other, captivation the photograph of Emma between them. Jimmy stood aside, crying quietly. When the cameras assuredly cut to commercial, he didn't move back to his desk. The actualization ran 20 account over that night. No one complained.